Why TV still matters in China. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Alfonso de Dios in Shanghai, and I'm the guest host of this week's episode of Thoughtful China. Marketers in China are putting greater emphasis on social media and digital campaigns, but that doesn't mean television should be ignored. TV can and will be relevant as long as it is used as part of a holistic communication planning process. This week on Thoughtful China, our panel of media experts will tell you how and when TV is a relevant tool to build brand partnerships and drive consumer awareness. And Sriram will share a thought or two about why traditional media scale is critical for brand building. But first, with us is James Galpin, Director Media Practice, Africa, Asia Pacific at Millward Brown, Ge Yun, Senior Communications Planning Director for China at Karat, and Lyndon Morant, Strategy Partner at Mindshare China. A lot of advertisers, especially from outside an agency, see China as a national platform where there are many levels from city to provincial to national where TV can really contribute in terms of building your reach and frequency, right? So it has to be taken market by market. So in that sense, yes, TV still is relevant because what market are we talking about? We're not talking about national China, right? And on the second point, in terms of how TV, you need to look at it holistically, TV as screens, multi-screens, working with online video or mobile video. So in that sense, you mentioned a couple of programs, it seems that TV can still be or has evolved into a catalyst platform, catalyst screen, right, for the other media. For example, Baba Chunar, right, Daddy Where We Going, and The Voice, unscripted reality formats turned into movies, a different screen. Right? Of course, The Voice was not as successful on screen because it was rushed and all that, but Daddy Where We Going, huge success on TV, on movies. So do we now see, not a resurgence, but really TV sort of reinventing itself and saying, look, I cannot only just build wide and deep reach and frequency, but now I can be a catalyst medium for online, for mobile, even for screens. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that, again, I guess I'm partly drawing on what I've seen elsewhere as well as in China. I don't think a TV business worth its salt in the modern media world doesn't think equally about distributing its content online and monetizing it. Now, the particular environment in China might present some challenges in how integrated that can be, but if you look at most of the markets in the world, the TV producers, who would be the TV channels particularly, typically, monetize and distribute their content both through their traditional distribution TV channel, but also through online services as well. And they manage the whole thing. And as advertisers, you can buy into the whole package or bits of the package. And I think that's where it's going. And maybe there's some greater separation in China at the moment, but it's probably going to get more integrated over time.
It seems to be a new way of doing things here in China, right? And they're realizing the potential of sort of migrating the format across screens.
I use an old phrase, but I still think it's true even as a media guy. Content is king. It always has been. And if you've got great content, you'll get eyeballs to it, and you'll just find the most efficient places to distribute it.
So it seems that we can safely say that it's not an or choice, but an and proposition, right? It's not looking at TV versus mobile versus online versus movie. Yeah, you look at it as a multi-screen strategy. And then that, I think, my personal assessment has become the new thinking now because audiences are fragmented, are moving in between screens so rapidly, right? So that for agencies, especially for clients, that thinking has to be there, right? You agree with that approach somehow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we heard a really cool example from Ji Yun earlier around the inclusion of QR codes on TV shows and things like that. I think QR codes is a bit of a buzzword here in China just because of WeChat. By definition, there's like 600 million QR codes flying around China right now. I think you can look at the American model and the way that they include hashtags, real-time conversation that viewers can have with the characters in the show while they're watching it, especially for sporting events and kind of live moments. That's a really big deal. I do feel that China is still a little bit slow on that. I'm not sure that the idea of taking a TV program and making it into a film is really something that's repeatable many times. It's certainly not really scalable. It's something that can happen kind of once and probably never again. So I think the stations need to work more collaboratively with their partners in video sites, and again see them not as competition but as partners in content. I think the three kind of talent shows that we saw, Voice of China and China's Got Talent and so on, they all had bespoke video site partners as well. All three of them have 3 different partners. And so you've got programs running on TV, but they're distributed separately online. I think those two really need to work closer together. And then as James was saying, then the advertising opportunities get a lot more interesting, because all of a sudden you can go to one person and one property and know, measure, understand how the consumers of that property are going to be viewing it around different screens.
Right. I mean, in our work, in our recommendations with clients nowadays, rarely do I see a one-channel media plan. So it's always, because we know that when we set our communication objective, rarely do we see reach as the only objective. We would need engagement, and sometimes we would need conversion as well. So one-dimensional TV or one-dimensional OTV is definitely not enough if you want to engage your consumers and drive them to sales as well.
Right. Sorry.
No, sorry. I just a small build on what these guys have said, which is absolutely spot on. Is that I think that people forget, again, it's this artificial separation between digital and mobile and say TV. I think that what's really interesting is how digital is actually changing, and not mobile specifically, is changing that ecosystem, as was just illustrated here. Mobile allows TV to be interactive as any online offer can be, because the very existence of a small device you hold in your hand that you can readily communicate through things, through WeChat and all the rest of it, makes TV as interactive media. All of a sudden, if you're allowed to go there and given freedom to play. And in other markets, certainly you see lots of examples of where the content on TV involves interaction with the external audience. Legislative environments might make that harder to achieve in China in some contexts, but it's certainly somewhere that can go, you'd look to go, and TV companies are looking to go. So you're leveraging social media to enhance your own content engagement on TV in an interactive way. You can do it with magazine content too. You can put QR codes on a page now.
Right. Okay, so yeah, I fully agree with that. So now it's not just, it's not an either or, it's an and, it's multi-screens. How do you bundle it? And for brands, how do they really look at it as a total package? Now, having said that, let's go to the nuts and bolts for media planners. Okay, TV has GRPs, your reach and frequency. Every marketer at the start of every fiscal year will say, right, this is my budget. How do I know my TV cost per rating point? I can measure GRPs. I plan out my entire 12-month calendar based on that. I build awareness, I build reach. Now I've got digital, I've got maybe mobile. Let's just take those 2 screens. I don't have the GRPs for those, right? Sure, I know they will build engagement probably better than TV and conversion better than TV, but how do I put that in dollars and cents in terms of marketing plan, marketing budget, media budget, X amount of GRPs, share of voice. But now there's just a new system that measures, that can measure, we talked about this briefly, James, digital, online video, GRPs, reach and frequency, and mobile, okay? Do you think this will become a tipping point for at least to make it easier and put some numbers and data behind the upfront planning process in terms of estimating multi-screen, reach, frequency, and GRPs, so that advertisers can now scale up using mobile and using digital online videos?
Sure. I see there are a couple of things happening in the analytics world that is helping to drive multi-screen strategy. The first is the planning process. Agencies now have developed a multi-screen planning tool that is able to propose a multi-screen plan based on the objectives that you set in the beginning. Objectives include reach, engagement, and conversion. So the software is able to tell you what percentage of the total budget should go to TV, what kind of reach it's going to give you. So in the planning process, we're able to do that. And also in terms of measurement, I see more and more clients are using sales response modeling to evaluate channel ROI. And the TV ROI actually in the last few years has been on decline. And this prompts marketers to look at non-TV channels. And again, some demographic segment and digital ROI is working a lot harder for marketers than TV ROI.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very focused now, although I do come from a market mix background as well, on understanding brand effect or building brand equity is where Millward Brown as a business focuses. So our involvement in sort of judging media performance is more on the brand strength measurement than a sales efficiency measurement. And I think that's one of the things that the lack of good data on digital has really hindered, because it's meant people have been over-reliant on response metrics, which are only a very partial view on what digital is delivering. But to have a good understanding of what digital might be doing beyond its immediate response metrics, you do need better data on who's being reached, how often they're being reached, and so on. And then you can apply that data into things like market mix modeling far more effectively, and in the sort of work that we do. If you don't even know what % of your TA has been reached, how many times, it's really hard to work out what's been delivered in terms of impact, beyond the simple response metrics you can get online. So it makes you look at what you can measure, not what you should measure, or not what you should look at. Yeah, and that's always the danger with a pure response-driven idea of a medium.
Although, again, coming from the agency background, I see more and more, rightly so, clients are demanding more explanations for why we make the recommendations that we do. And those explanations aren't always to do with, it's an awesome placement or because we've done it before. Those aren't rational reasons. So what we're being pressured, and again, emphasise rightly so, is to turn what used to be a media spend into a media investment. And in media investment, and we are in the media investment business, means that you put money into a certain place because you know it's going to have a certain reaction. Whether that you can tell that through market mix analysis or conversion metrics or whatever, but certainly there's not the feeling anymore that you've got a media budget and then you just go and spend that budget. You spend it and then that's kind of money that you'll never see again. There's really a lot more focus on the difference between spend and investment. What is the ROI?
Right, well that's good. That's good to hear that. No, I mean data certainly is an enabler, right? For many years it was not whole, it was not complete, and most of the time it was a disabler. At P&G, there was, based on our experience, there was too much reliance on TV GRPs, correlating it with market share. It was too linear, it doesn't work that way, and it's too one-dimensional. Now at least with other media reach frequency GRPs, there's a more educated approach to it instead of just relying on one-dimensional variable, which is TV.
Yeah, and then there's also, I wouldn't say, I think pressure's the wrong word, but there's also opportunities for brand owners and agencies to work a lot closer together when it comes to sharing data, sharing information. So rather than the media agencies simply referring to share of voice, if we can transfer share of voice into share of market, the only way we can really do that is by obtaining and mashing together the sales data that you guys have with the media data that we have, and then that's when you get more powerful models. And of course, all of the data should be proprietary to the brand owner.
Fully agree with that. Agencies should demand from their clients, and I've seen clients or agencies not ask, clients not give the data. But how can you be complete in your assessment if you do not have access to at least the basic fundamental data? You don't need profit data, you need maybe sales, you need shares, right? Volume, value shares, that's critical. Let's take a break to hear from the sponsor of this week's episode of Thoughtful China, Chail Worldwide. When we come back, Sriram will share a thought or two about why traditional media scale is critical for brand building.
Now, let's go.
Every time I watch a live spectacular like the Winter Olympics or Wimbledon or an expensive TV production like Game of Thrones, I always think that could only have made financial sense on broadcast TV. Because broadcast TV has the ability to premiere something in front of a huge audience at a single moment in time and make it work financially either through advertising or even viewer subscriptions. Now theoretically, any online channel could buy out the rights for something big, premiere it exclusively at a specific time, and try and achieve the same thing. But the online TV model is all about video on demand and about making money from the long tail. Yes, Netflix is a pioneer in using original programming to build a user base, and over time will be able to challenge at least the TV series model on broadcast TV. But I think we're still quite far from Youku bidding for exclusive rights to the Olympics and managing to make it pay back without changing a lot of things about how consumers view video content online. And despite the explosion of device availability and bandwidth, large sections of consumers in India, China, and other developing nations are still used to watching TV on TV. It's going to be a while before infrastructure and consumer technology penetrate far enough to change that. So at least for the moment, there is a specific role, market segment, and geography in which traditional broadcast TV continues to be relevant and financially viable.
Welcome back. We're in the studio with James Galpin, Ge Yun, and Lyndon Morant, talking about why TV is still one of the best platforms to invest marketing budgets in China. TV seems to be losing out to digital media, social media, because digital is very interactive with the consumer. Interactive, immediate feedback. There's a sense that there's direct communication with the consumer by brands, whereas TV is really one way, not as two-way as digital. TV is more sit back, while digital is really lean forward. Do you agree? Do you think this is why there seems to be this perception that TV is losing its relevance in China?
There has been a lot of heated discussion about whether TV is dead or not.
Right.
I would take the TV or non-TV debate against the communications objectives.
Okay.
So if the marketing objective is to penetration, and the communications job is to really build awareness, then there's no doubt that TV is still the most important channel. But if the communications objective is to deepen a relationship between a brand and consumers, then interaction is very important. You need to engage your consumers. Then TV obviously cannot do that job. Then digital comes into the place. I think a lot of brands in China now are in the second scenario. That's why digital is getting more and more important. But then I want to take another factor put into the table, is that another reason why TV is losing relevance is because of content itself. Right? And you see, it's honest that on TV, the content is getting increasingly uninteresting and even irrelevant. But at the same time, on video sites, you see all this new and exciting content coming up. You can see the latest series from Korea, from UK and US, and very naturally people are drawn to the content that they think most relevant, right?
That's true.
So I think content is also a very important factor that TV is increasingly losing relevance.
Right, that's a good point. You want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with the points being made there. I'd also just wanted to pick up on I probably slightly disagree with the premise as sort of presented in the question. Digital isn't automatically a sit-forward medium. If someone is watching a long-form TV program on their mobile, they're sitting back. They're not sitting forward, and they don't want to interact. They want to watch and absorb the content. So it is the nature of the content that determines whether it sits forward or sit back. Digital are just distribution mechanics. Now, they do have some interactive capability that isn't always available, say, in traditional print or TV, but in digital, you get sit forward and sit back media. And The other point I would make that I think is critical, I think one of the most misguided things in the digital world is that most consumers actually do engage with brand communications. They don't. But those brand communications still work. If you actually look at the percentage of, say, click-through versus the number of impressions delivered, it's minuscule. If you look at the number of social media postings against the population of China, the numbers are usually ridiculously small in any media-scaled sense. So the value isn't, oddly, in the interaction. The value is often in the broadcast advertising effects, even of digital. But that often isn't looked at. People get obsessed with the little bits of interaction and forget that maybe most of the value is in the non-interaction, which is still more like other traditional media.
Both good points. I think it's you mentioned earlier, and you built on it in terms of really the value of the content, whether it be on TV or digital screens. I think that's a very good point. I guess in the digital world, they have more and more diverse content. There are less regulations, so now they have access to UK, US series, legal, right? And there's a lot of user-generated content. So, which brings us now to our third question, really, in terms of content. Okay, given that scenario, and we've all seen the content here in China, TV, okay, have you seen TV broadcasters, first of all, do you believe they're cognizant of this issue, that their content needs improvement? And second, have you seen TV broadcasters make moves to really improve their content? Personally, I've seen the growth of legal format or IP purchasing by stations and no longer just copying formats and producing their own. No? Could that be a step towards that development?
I think it could be, yeah. I think in the months and the years to come, we'll see a lot more, or we should see a lot more in terms of mergers and acquisitions, not just of content series, but of actual platforms. So I would expect that a Hunan satellite TV might go after purchasing a video site platform, for example. Not just to get hold of the content, but because that's where the audience is going. A lot of these national broadcasters are all state-owned, which makes them inherently kind of slow to react, I think. And their institutions employ many thousands of people, and there just hasn't been that competition with regular TV stations that's really going to drive the diversity and the innovation that we see with a very, very fragmented digital video platform space. Many, many more digital video platforms in China than there are in the rest of the world.
I would say, I think, again, you touched on it, it is heavily driven by the regulation. I mean, the TV producers, in terms of what they can put on their TV channels, are limited by what they're allowed to put on. And let's be honest, I suspect that if given free rein to just maximize audience with no control on content, the TV sort of content of China would look, in many respects, remarkably similar to the rest of the world. The same sort, although Chinese versions of programming, would be scaled and massive, and there'd be lots of reality TV and all of the sort of populist stuff that is what scales everywhere else in the world. But they're massively restricted from doing that. Whereas the online space, it has freedom to do anything they want. They can buy the best of foreign and share it. The real change will come, or would come, if suddenly the TV channels were free to air what they wanted. And then suddenly all the eyeballs that have moved to video might well suck back off video, online video, and back onto TV. But I think it's a far more regulatory driven issue than it is a simple, they're not making good enough content. They're not allowed to air what would be the primary viewing choice of most people most of the time.
The trend seems to definitely be towards being more restrictive and less open, certainly in the last few years. It's not like you look ahead in the horizon and you see greater freedoms of broadcaster capabilities at all. And
the really interesting thing is the online video development in China is driven entirely by that. It hasn't developed like that in the rest of the world because in the rest of the world TV can compete equally on content. And then if you look at the actual share of video viewing, it's still dominated by TV. So it's only really in China, in this unique ecosystem, that the facilitation of this massive ecosystem of online video exists.
So, well, thank you very much. That's all the time we have, and it's been delightful having you on the panel.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Youku Tudou and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. See you again.